bit left.
A little bit more mountain biking time.
Yep.
left in the year. Great. That's really good. So we got people joining. Might give them another minute or so. I'm just putting this live as well. Great. So for everyone that's joining, we well, as usual, we'll be using the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, put them in there, and we'll go through. We'll be answering questions as we go through, and any other feedback, please put it in the chat, which I might start with. Just might put something in the chat to get people going. Hi, where are you from? And definitely, hopefully, you're keen to hear about AI in the world of entertainment and marketing. Really good. And so just to kick us off, thanks for coming to another Data Futurology webinar. What we look to do is every week we speak with executives in the AI space, experts in AI from all around the world, and we pick their brains on what is happening in the sector, but also on the leadership side of artificial intelligence. So how to be a good leader and how to make a difference in your organizations with the work that you do. And today we're speaking with Tyler Folkman. And Tyler is the head of artificial intelligence at Branded Entertainment Network, Branded Entertainment Network. And he's had a really long and interesting career working in Ancestry.com, working in universities, writing towards data science, and obviously now at Branded Entertainment Network. So we're very excited to have Tyler on the show today. Tyler, thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
And we've got people from Melbourne staying strong with stage 4 lockdown.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I know that's been taking definitely a big mental toll for people. So definitely stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe, and hopefully events like this, events online, can help you feel like you're still part of a community, and that the interaction with people is still there, even though we're having to maintain a distance for some time, so then we can all get through it. So Tyler, I might ask you to kick us off with a bit of an origin story, mate. How did you get started in the world of data? What was it that pulled you in, and how did you end up becoming head of AI at Branded Entertainment Network?
Yeah, I have an interesting kind of background, I suppose, a little less traditional. I actually studied economics in undergrad. After I graduated, I went and worked for a consulting company doing what's called economic consulting, which is not a super well-known area. Basically what that involves is when there's large lawsuits, they usually have to come up with a damage number. So if you're, when Apple was suing Samsung, they have to hire economists to come up with damage numbers. Sorry if you can hear my dog in the background.
That's all right, he's excited too.
Yeah, but what kind of happens is they hire economists to try to come up with how much they should sue each other for. So when Apple's suing someone for $1 billion, or Samsung, whatever the company may be, they hire these economic consulting companies to run statistics, analytics, data, and come up with a number to say this patent infringement was worth X amount of dollars. And so that was kind of my first entrance into the world of data. I got to work with some really smart economists, got to kind of see data used in a cool way. And that kind of got me learning a little bit about machine learning, found that very exciting, thought I could, do a lot more as I could kind of grow my understanding of different algorithms. And so I went back to school to the University of Texas in Austin and studied computer science, and kind of really focused my studies on machine learning. And that kind of was able to get me into some jobs at like Amazon while I was in school, which then led to working in Ancestry and doing a lot of work with unstructured data. So one of the cool things we did there is we built this ability to read in raw newspapers. So like a picture of a newspaper, you could then use computer vision to break it up into all the articles, and then you could use natural language processing to basically find all the interesting family relationships in that. So if there was like an obituary when someone died, you could go in and pull out like who died, when did they die, who were they related to, which is really useful information for people trying to do family history work. And it was all automated using deep learning, machine learning tools. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. It was fun to work on those problems. And then after a few years, Ben or Brandon Entertainment Networks reached out to me and wanted to see if I wanted to start a team for them, basically. So a year and a half ago, I joined them, basically built a team from myself to we're now about 11 people, and just working on trying to find out how to really leverage AI and data in the world of entertainment, specifically product placement. So if you're watching a movie or a TV show and you see like a car and it zooms in on like the logo, that's product placement. But we also do things with influencers too. Like if you're watching, you on YouTube, you might have sponsors or people you talk about. And so we try really hard to connect brands with content in a way that's really natural and rewarding for both, the brand, the creator, and the audience. So the audience feels like, yeah, this was actually really relevant to me. On a data science podcast talking about an O'Reilly book is maybe really relevant. And so that sponsorship makes a lot of sense. So we try to make that seamless and use data to make it scale and be really effective.
Man, that is fantastic. And when you first started, Ben, was it, you said it was just you and it was sort of getting everything started from scratch. How was the early parts of that journey?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've always wanted to kind of have an opportunity to lead a team, build something. We had a few engineers that we kind of started with that were already there who've been super excellent. And so that was a huge benefit to me, is having a few people that were in the company, knew the data, knew what was kind of going around. And we used them, scaled up the data engineering team to kind of build a platform for data scientists to make it easy to get data, deploy models, basically do data science. And then we started hiring on data scientists and even some research scientists to kind of move the state of the art forward. So it's been really rewarding. It's been a really busy year and a half building kind of our foundation, but we've had a lot of success and are seeing some real value for the company using data, which is always exciting.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you did it the right way around in terms of getting the platform up and running first, getting the data ready, or the capability to have data for data scientists. That's excellent, because a lot of times people succumb to the pressure, I guess, and I know I've definitely done that mistake in the past. Succumb to the pressure of the business pressure or showing something of value, and sometimes often people hire data scientists first, and then they have, I don't know, very little to do, but they're definitely constrained because they don't have the platforms that enables data science in that way. Did you find it difficult to go about it the right way in your case?
Yeah, I mean, it can be challenging. We try to balance it. So what we try to do is release, have data scientists working on models that weren't released in the platform yet because it wasn't built yet. But we found ways to release them that created value for the company, while in parallel that engineers are working hard on getting, the platform up and going. Because I really am a big believer in data scientists being able to own the process, all the way from data collection, cleaning, modeling to deployment, and even, creating little web applications. The data scientists on our team actually can deploy their own models and create front-end interfaces so that someone on the team can come actually play with the model that's not a data scientist, see what the predictions are, see if it makes sense. And we found that creating a platform that enables data scientists to do that allows them to work much more efficiently. Where I've seen people kind of fail sometimes is if you treat it more like an assembly line where data scientists only model, they just get blocked too much. If they have to rely on so many teams to get value, it just never works in my experience.
I agree.
Maybe it could work, but I haven't seen it work. So the more you can handle as a data scientist, I think the more valuable you'll be.
I agree. I could not agree more. And did you find any resistance or pushback or or people coming in from with a different expectation or different mindset when you're presenting this idea of being generalist to them and being across the whole value chain and taking accountability and ownership for that? How did you find that people reacted to that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I've been super lucky because one, the executive team at the company is really, really interested in AI, very knowledgeable, and really trust me, I think, to make the decision. So I've been able to have a lot of, I guess, ability to do that. And then since this team started from scratch, I could hire people that were excited about that. So I didn't come into a team that was doing something one way and had to shift it to another way. I actually come in and say, this is the way we should do it. And let's do it from the beginning and bring people in who are excited about doing it that way. So we've been able to hire some really amazing people that have really, I think, adopted this idea of our job doesn't end until we've created value for the company. And if that means you're learning how to, write unit tests, or you are learning how to write some front end code, or spending more time cleaning up your code and making it faster, that's what we do. And if that means you should be doing more modeling, that's what you do. So it's kind of whatever it takes to create value with data is what my team is trying to accomplish.
Awesome. That is a fantastic, man. And how important do you think the reporting line is, and the knowledge of AI in the reporting line for you and your team? What type of impact has that had in what you guys have been able to accomplish in the last year and a half?
Yeah, I think it's super, super valuable to have people that have an understanding of AI at the highest levels in a company. People that understand the value of data and understand that it's a process that can take time. It's a process that naturally has experimentation, which failure is a part of experimentation. And when you can have an understanding at the highest levels of a company that we're making investments in automation or data, that there will be things that we learn along the way that will have to inform our decisions. That's really, really powerful because it gives you the flexibility to make the right choices. Whereas you can imagine a company that says, give me your year plan for your team right now. What are you going to do quarter one, quarter two? Oftentimes the data is informing what you do. And so if you plan 1 year out, 3 years out, too specifically, it's just a waste of time. So what I found to be really valuable is you have a team that understands that, they can be comfortable with some ambiguity because that's just the way it is. Not that you shouldn't have an idea where you're going and the steps to get there, but if you try to treat it too much like let's map out every step for the next year, you'll often find yourself just learning way more during the process and finding that what you thought was going to happen isn't actually what happened.
Exactly right, 100%. That's really good. And have you had to spend much time in educating other executives in the company and fostering that knowledge of AI and that data literacy and data curiosity?
No, not really. I think everyone on the team when I came in was already really, they'd spent time learning about AI. They, made sure that they thought it made sense. Obviously, I think I've been able to help them learn more, but they've just already known a lot, been really receptive. So it's been a really great fit, which I think is kind of a key to success, right? If you want data science or machine learning, whatever you want to call it, to be core to your company's success, it needs to be like anything. People at all levels need to be bought in and understand what that means and have expectations that align with reality.
I think that is so key, isn't it? That align with reality. That's great. And we have a question from Taz Tudor. Hey Taz. And he's asking if you can give examples of some of the platforms that you're using to for data scientists to own the end-to-end process or the end-to-end value chain, and essentially, go through the whole spectrum. Obviously, whatever you can share, whether it was off the shelf or built in house, and how do you get data scientists to be able to share the predictions of the models with users?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's an interesting field right now. So what I would call that field is ML ops, or machine learning operations, and it's kind of exploding. Even a year or two ago, there weren't a lot of paid tools that did that very well for like companies trying to just pay and not have to worry about it. A few emerged that are better than others, I think. We don't use any. We've actually since it's pretty core to our success, we want to own that end to end. So we've built basically from the ground up using open source, and I'll talk about that in a second because I think that's valuable. But there are some tools I think that exist that are pretty decent. There are some like Comet ML that do things like experimentation tracking. So when you're running models, you kind of can push your metrics to this front end, and it will show you like your learning curves. It'll show you loss. It'll basically plot whatever you want. It's kind of like a tensor board type thing, but they take care of a lot of the operation of that for, I think, a really reasonable price. Other things
what
like
was that one called? Sorry.
Comet ML.
Yep.
They're pretty solid. Another one I've heard good things about is Converge.io. I've heard they have a really solid, almost like full service data science platform that's supposed to do a lot. We don't use them, so I can't speak too deeply, but I've heard good things. Then if you look on the open source side, there's a lot of things you can kind of play with. One that I found people talk a lot about is Kubeflow, which uses Kubernetes to kind of scale the machine learning operations. There's another one called MLflow, which is a Databricks service, and Databricks is behind Spark. Metaflow is Netflix's kind of operational machine learning platform. And then so another tool we actually do use is Streamlit, which allows you to do front-end experimentation as a data scientist. So you can really easily take your models and get them into a front-end app that people can say, here's my inputs, what's my output? And it makes it really easy for data scientists to do front-end work. So what we've kind of decided on my team is we take a lot of these open source tools and kind of build the glue to make them work with our framework and our processes, and then build additional things when necessary. We found that to be really beneficial because if you are building a company on which data science is core, you need your platform to really fit into your back end and into the way you do things. And that can be hard if you're buying it as a service. If you're just getting started as a startup and you don't really have a back end yet, you don't really have anything yet, paying for some of these services can really probably get you moving faster. But for companies that are looking to really integrate it into an existing architecture, I think getting really talented engineers to help integrate open source or even some paid things into your pipeline can do a lot. There's a lot of great tools out there, and figuring out how to glue them together for how they work for you can be really powerful.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. And you said that you're gonna talk a little bit about the open source side, some of the open source tools that you guys use as part of the end-to-end value chain. Could you give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so a lot of those ones I mentioned, the end are open source. So Streamlit's open source. I think Kubeflow is open source, but you can also pay Google to do managed for you through their cloud. It's a Google product. What else? Metaflow is open source. There's other things like DVC that's open source for like data management tools. What else do I see? Those are probably some of the big ones. Metaflow is, I think, one of the better ones that's open source. And then MLflow, I think, has some open source functionality as well.
Nice. That's really good. That's really good. And can you give us some examples or use cases, obviously things that you can share about how AI and the data science team are adding value to the organization, and what those projects or use cases look like?
Yeah, for sure. So one of our core things is connecting the brand with the best partner. And so you can imagine you're a YouTuber, you're a podcaster on what we call the influencer side. So people that are out there creating content on places like Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Spotify, right, with the podcast side. And then there's a bunch of brands on the other side, right? And the brands want to reach an audience that cares about their product. The person creating the content wants to connect their audience with products they care about. And they want to do it in a way that's really native and fits well with what the content is they're creating. And they also want to get support, right? Like that's the thing. They want support to be able to do what they love and create content for their audiences. So where we try to use data is almost like a recommendation algorithm where you've got all these brands, all these potential creators for these brands, and how do you connect them in the best way possible? And what makes that kind of challenging is brands can have very different goals. So one brand might really want to just get the word out about their brand. one brand might want to change perception about their brand in the marketplace. One brand might really just care about conversions. Maybe they have an app that they sell and they don't care about anything except getting people to buy that app, right? And so how do you use the data to connect brands to the best creators of content? And we think that's super powerful because people don't watch ads, right? Like if you're watching a show on TV, you're skipping the ads, right? Any brand trying to reach their audience through traditional advertising is going to have a hard time. If you do it on like paid ads online, people block that pretty easily with web browsers. And so what we try to do is make it easy and super effective for brands to connect with creators that have audiences that care about their brand. So, for you have this data podcast connecting you with some of these people that are really passionate about data and are creating products around it. Could be a great fit depending on their goals. And that we think is a win-win for everyone. And since we've been doing it for so long, we have a long history of data on what's worked and what hasn't worked. And we can use that data to start saying, okay, when we see these patterns, there's success there. So when a new brand comes and work with us, we say, based on the data, we're seeing success. And as brands work with us, we get more data from them, right? And we can say, based on the data we're seeing running your campaigns, we can now continue to optimize for success for you. And it's just this recommendation algorithm that consistently gets better and better and better as they work with us because we see what works and what doesn't for their goals.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And what type of data do you need from both sides of the marketplace? And do you do a lot of work with unstructured data? How does that look like?
Yeah, we do a lot of work with unstructured, generally from the platforms, meaning like YouTube, Instagram. We connect to their APIs, which allows us to programmatically pull data over like what's the average number of views someone's getting on their YouTube channel, how often are they posting, what's the engagement rate. Those are some pretty simple ones. We dive a lot deeper, which gives you a sense. We can also look at some of the unstructured data around that. What's the thumbnail, what's the video even. We do a lot of video processing to kind of see what's the content they're creating. And then on the brand side, what we really just need is what's working for the brand. So as we run campaigns, let's say that they want to maximize conversions. Say we work with YouTuber X and they get 10 conversions, and we work with YouTuber Y and they get 100 conversions. We then use that data and feed it back into our models to say, why did this happen? Why did they get such different conversions? And then when we retrain the model, we can then repredict on all the YouTubers we know about and then reorder them and say, based on what's been working, here's the new order for this brand on YouTubers they should prioritize. And not only prioritize, but we actually do predict how well we think we'll do for your brand. So we'll say, we think this YouTuber will generate 20 conversions for you. And as a brand, you usually have a good idea of what a conversion's worth. So then you can have a sense of how much should you pay that person. Because that's a challenging thing in the product placement spaces. How much do you pay someone on YouTube or on Instagram or a TV show or a movie to have your product in it? Can be challenging. And having data to kind of guide that to say, yeah, this is a reasonable price is very valuable.
That's really good. And do you guys look into things like competing products or competing offers in each of the channels? Like when you work with say a YouTuber or a distribution channel, that they might already have some products that are being placed through that. And how do you guys take into consideration what can be a product that is in competition or a product that is in a complement or an untapped area for that distribution channel?
Yeah, that is definitely one thing we can do for a channel. We can see how much of their content's been sponsored in the past, who's sponsoring it, when did they sponsor it. So when we're working with the brand, we have a good idea of, are they sponsoring your competitors? Because then you maybe don't want to sponsor that person, or maybe you do. Like, again, that comes more down to a strategic decision at the brand level. But we as a data science team are trying to provide as much information and data-backed reasoning as possible for decisions. And we are strong believers in what we call the cyborg approach, meaning we have expert humans in the team that know how to run marketing campaigns backed with expert machine learning tools that allow them to kind of have a really strong understanding of what's working and not working. It's data-backed, prediction-backed. and then use their experts, human understanding to make good decisions. And obviously, with working with the brand as a partner.
That's awesome, man. That's really great. And we got a question from Nakul. Hey, Nakul. And he's wondering, well, it's related back to about the open source tooling, and he wanted to ask you about the fact that often when a company is looking, an established company usually is looking to adopt open source tooling, the team gets a lot of questions around what is the value, what's going to be the effect for the stakeholders, and how has your team quantified that benefit or made that sort of internal sale in the past? And Nakul's saying that a lot of times he feels like the improvements are more for the technical team, for the data science team around their developer experience or easy debugging or the community and the support behind the tool. But that sometimes it's difficult to quantify that for the executives and the end users. Have you guys come across that before? And how did you go past it if you have?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a challenge, right? When you're basically trying to communicate with people that don't have the same background as you. Like if you're a very technical data scientist and you're trying to communicate with people that don't have I'm just gonna shut this door, technical backgrounds, how do you do that, right? And I think there are some strategies you can use. One is, I think technical people rely a little bit too much on straight up data sometimes when trying to convince people. That is a key part, and I'll come back to that. But you also need to connect an emotional value, I think, to some of these things and make it feel valuable. Meaning that when you go and talk to someone and are saying, we want this tool, maybe you've calculated it'll save, 10 developer hours a month, just making up numbers. That's, I think, definitely one thing you should bring up, but you should also try to find a way to connect it to their background. Meaning, what's the average developer salary in your company? What 10 developer hours a month, what does that equate to a year? You can then maybe come up with a number that says it'll save us 50 grand a year. And then you can connect that to something that they know about, right? If we get this tool, we will be able to buy this thing, or we will be able to invest in this thing that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, or maybe hire another person that can make us move faster. And there's a book that talks about this called Switch, which is, I think, Switch, Making Change When Change is Hard. And it talks about how people kind of have two modes. One is like your emotional mode, and one is more of your like analytical mode. And when you're trying to convince people of something, you need to kind of hit both. You need to show them this like vision of why this thing is awesome. And a lot of that's going to be emotional, right? Marketers know this, that people make decisions based on emotions. And then you also need to provide the data to back that up and what you think the next steps are going to be. So you can be like, just imagine this world where next year we save so much money, we can hire another person. And we're going to get there by investing in this tool. It will cost this much, but it will save us this much an hour. So you're not only providing like the data behind it, but you're also providing the vision around why we want to make this investment and trying to connect it to something they understand. I think that's where a lot of data scientists get a little bit mixed up, is they just want people to act almost very, very, very rational, which maybe would be nice, but it's just not the way things tend to work. You need to be hitting the rational side as well as the, emotional side of that decision.
I think that is an excellent suggestion, man. And definitely if you understand the person that's making the decision and you understand their motivations, there will be some subjective area that they care about, something that they would like some bragging rights about. And if you can line up with that in an emotional way, and people might be wanting to tell their superiors or their peers that they're using the latest technology on this side, or that they're able to attract better talent, more talented people because they use X and Y, then that's definitely a good way to go about it. But I totally agree with you, Tyler. The emotional lever is often untapped or insufficiently tapped in our area. That's really good. And Nakul says, thank you. No, all good, right? Good question. And Tyler, I want to ask you, when you first started in this role and over the past year and a half, I wanted to ask you about your planning and your strategy. And so how did you define the strategy for the team in the organization? How did you define the strategy when you first came in, and how did that evolve over time? And what have been your areas of focus over the journey, and how has that been changing over time?
Yeah, I think so. When I first came in, there was definitely a strategy in place and things that just had to be done, right? And I think that's pretty common when people are going to hire someone, they hopefully have an idea of what that person should be doing. So the first maybe 6 months were pretty defined. We had a few just objectives the business needed out of us, and we delivered on them. I think once you get past it, then it's kind of like, especially if you're leading a team, what do we do right now? Like we kind of hit the first goals. For me, the way I like to think about it is, how do I enable the most innovation and opportunity for true value creation to be created from data? And to do that, a lot of it's actually setting up the systems right? It's setting up the platform. It's hiring great people. It's making the data accessible and easy to understand. You want to make it so easy for a data scientist to just great to come in and just be able to create value fast. And so a lot of my focus was, how do we get the platform working well so that when we do hire these really excellent data scientists, that they can go end to end, full stack very easily, come in, have an idea, figure out if it works quickly, and if it doesn't, move on to the next idea, and basically create an engine for innovation for the company. And then second, I tried to focus the team on things that I thought were clear value creation that were hard to replicate from our competitors, basically. So something might be clearly valuable, but if everyone else is already doing it and doing it well, it might be hard to maybe dominate in that, right? To really create exceptional value with. But if you can do something truly great and it's hard to replicate and it creates a lot of value, then that's exciting. And so I think my team really try to focus on that type of value, where we see huge amounts of value for the company and for the brands we work with and the influencers we work with. And we also think that it's something that gives us a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And that's something that I kind of took from, I'm blanking on his name, but he used to work at Netflix, and he's fairly, he does a lot of talks about this. And one of the things he talks about is how Netflix tried to do this, right? You try to create value in ways that gives you an actual competitive advantage. And one thing to look at is, how hard is it to replicate?
Yeah, that's really great. And do you have any examples of that you could share in terms of areas where you feel that you guys have been able to create a competitive advantage from the data science work?
Yeah, I think a few areas. One is actually our platform. We've invested a lot of time and resources in making it easy for data scientists to innovate quickly. And I think that's a huge competitive advantage for us, because that's a lot of upfront cost to invest in something like that, and takes a lot of expertise to build. But once you have it, data scientists can iterate on an idea very quickly. And so if it takes our competitors a year to test out an idea and it takes us a week, we can just test so many more ideas. Secondly, our ability to make these performance predictions is very, I think, unique and hard to replicate. It's not easy to say this influencer will work super well with this brand and then quantify that value. And we've learned a lot through our process and have invested a lot in trying to figure this out. And I think that's one reason we have an advantage, is just the data we have as a company, being doing this for a while, and the expertise we've been able to invest and figure this out, and really just kind of create things that were non-trivial. I think gives us an edge. So
that's amazing, man. And I love the focus on scalability, or on scale, on reproducibility, and for the decisions to be made from a quant perspective, that's and for those decisions to be done at scale. Like, I think that's definitely a huge competitive advantage, and really, really exciting. And sometimes I see a lot of data science teams get stuck in doing things manually time after time, and sometimes you got to sort of either step back and look at the fact that things are quite similar, like they can be created, they can be put into a platform that you can create to make it scalable, and you get those improvements going from as you were saying, if the competitor is taking a year to do something and it takes you a week because of your platform, then that's a huge win. Was the focus on scale something that you had from the beginning?
Yeah, for sure. There's another book I like called Moonshots, which came out I think last year, which talks about like how do you create value with innovation. And it's interesting. You kind of have to reach a critical mass of experimentation to kind of see value with that. And I think what the book suggests is on average, like good ideas actually fail like 3 times before someone figures out how to do it. So they talk about some of these different inventions, like in war and in medicine, where people were onto the right idea, but they just didn't follow it long enough, or they didn't invest enough in it, and then they bailed. And then another person bailed. And then like the third person that kept going with it, it finally worked. And so one of the challenges with innovation is knowing when to keep going and when to stop. And if you can make the cost to keep going lower, you can just innovate so much more. And if the cost to keep going is way less, you make this decision, yeah, let's keep trying it a little bit longer. And it lets you learn so much faster so that you hopefully cut off bad ideas quickly. Like we don't have a crystal ball that we know like this is going to be the best idea ever going out of the gate. But we do know, we feel that we're, a smart, talented team, and that if we can experiment, try things out, we'll be able to learn along the way. And so we just try to always be learning, try to always be improving. And again, if we can make that cycle faster, you just learn so much faster. And so it's not that you necessarily had the best ideas going out, but you were able to remove the worst ideas really fast and then get to the best idea faster.
That's awesome. That's really good. And that was the book is called Moonshots, like
Moonshots, Loonshot.
Yeah, right. I'll have to look it up. Yeah. The by Safi Bakal. Yeah, nice. Thanks, man. I'll put it on the show notes as well. And we get a question from Conrad. Says, Tyler, how often do you see management getting the data and AI strategy right, so that then the data science team and the analytics team can get the right stewardship and direction? And as a follow-up question or part 2, how do you think management can improve the overall data and AI strategy?
Yeah,
lots to discuss there. Hey,
it's a good question, a hard one to answer. How often do I see it right? I think one of the challenges we have right now is that, well, data science isn't necessarily anything new. People have been doing statistics, actuarial sciences. There's been lots of fields using data for a long time. But what I do think is fairly new is companies really trying to build machine learning based products at scale. So Google and like Facebook may be doing this the longest, these like big tech companies. And they've got some decent processes in place, but they've invested a lot in how to make this work and how to make the strategy work, right? And they've experimented a lot, I'm sure learned a lot along the way. What we've yet to really define, in my opinion, is like these are the best practices for like a data strategy or a data science, workflow. And on the engineering side, if you kind of compare it to, they've got some things that are considered maybe best practices, right? Where Agile is very popular right now. You've got, Git, which data scientists do a lot. Like they've got so many more decades on, I think, the data science flow that they figured a lot more out. I think we're still early days on trying to say these are things you definitely should do. And so I think it's hard to necessarily say who's doing it well and who's doing it poorly. But I think in my opinion, and we'll see, maybe time will prove me wrong, I think the companies that are doing it right are investing in talented people. They're trusting them to know and to handle more than maybe you feel comfortable with, meaning that you make data a top level, they have a seat at the table, basically, the company at the highest level, so that data scientists understand the strategic vision of the company. Data scientists understand the goals. They understand really how the company is trying to succeed and operate in the marketplace. And then they're given leeway and flexibility to create opportunities using data. Where I think sometimes it fails is someone thinks they know at a high level what needs to be done, and then it kind of comes down as like, this has to be done. And that can work well. A lot of ways, a lot of times, like the problem is obvious, and obviously people at high levels have a good idea on the strategy and vision. So I'm not saying that can't work, but I think in the long run, what works the best is where there's a really strong partnership between data and all the teams, really, where data scientists have a good understanding of what value means for the company, and they're given, again, that opportunity to create it. And because they have these experiences with data that I think they can find along the way, say, oh, here's a thing we didn't even think about that seems really valuable. Like a lot of times they're just kind of these serendipitous moments where you're working on a problem and then this other thing comes up that's actually way more valuable. And if a data scientist doesn't have the opportunity or feel like he or she can make these deviations, you miss out on a lot of that. And so that's, I guess, maybe my answer is companies that can meld data with the rest of the company really well, I think will succeed, and then trust the data scientists to make that happen.
That's great, man.
What was the second part of the question here?
Well, actually, before we do that, I wanted to ask you about some of your tips to improve that partnership between the data teams and the rest of the organization, and how to create that tight connection between all the different parts of the organization and your teams. What are some of your tips?
Yeah, I think for me, I think expecting more out of data scientists, and expecting more is maybe not the right word, but trusting data scientists to actually understand product needs is really valuable. Like, I don't look at data scientists like, you're just going to create models and I'll tell you what models to create. I like to say, data scientists, here's the team that has needs, data needs. We think there's opportunities there. Here are some of my ideas, having worked with them, where I think there's opportunities. Go meet with some of the people on that team, spend a day in their shoes, look at their workflow, think about it as a data scientist, and then come back and let's talk about what opportunities we see and kind of figure out what to do together. Because when you give the data science that opportunity to kind of understand the product side a little bit more and the needs, they just, I think, will be like, oh, well, if we just use like a regression here, or if we gave them this simple tool, they could save 5 hours a day. Because I just, data scientists and engineers tend to hate mundane repetition. So if they see mundane repetition in a workflow, they'll think very quickly, okay, if it were me, I would build this thing. And then there's kind of this clear value add and this clear use case that they're building towards, as opposed to just going and saying, build a linear regression to predict this data point. Now they're thinking more about the end user and saying, okay, well, I actually want to make sure I have precise predictions, or I have high recall, or whatever that is. And so that's, I think, a really good way is get your data scientists involved and deeply integrated with the teams so they understand their process and their needs.
That's great. That's really good, man. Yeah, and I think that kind of covers the follow-up question that Conrad had, which was, how do you think management can improve their overall data and AI strategy? Definitely working closely in that partnership is very beneficial. So I think that's really good. Thank you. And we got a thanks from Conrad. No worries. And we definitely keep the questions coming, guys. And we got a question from Taz Tudor. Hey, mate. He asks about the future. So in 5 years, where will data science be? Will it be humanized, commoditized, something else? Where do you think things will go?
Yeah, it's a nice broad question. I think it's hard to say. A funny thing I think that I like to say is predicting the future is hard, even though a lot of times that's like the data scientist's job, right, is to predict the future, like with whatever they're doing. I think that, we're seeing what I think we're seeing in some of these large advancements with things like on the natural language processing side, GPT-3, where it's able to do some really cool stuff. On the image side, we saw a big renaissance, a while back, is when you combined large data sets with really large compute. Like, training these models is actually a multi-million-dollar effort, if people don't realize that. And most companies can't do that. So I think we'll continue to see people push the boundaries there, where they're just like, give me more data, give me more compute, and it's just going to get better. Like, I still think there's opportunities for that to happen. And I think that's exciting because we'll see some of these big breakthroughs that seem really almost like futuristic. I do think, though, AI is still more brittle than people think, meaning there's a long tail of use cases for many types of application. As you look at that long tail, it's not uncommon for the AI to get confused. That's not to mean it's not valuable, because if you can, solve 80% and then leave 20% for a human or a different process, that's a huge, huge time save. And you see this right now with like chatbots for companies, right? They have these chatbots on the internet, and when you have a customer service complaint, they interact with you in a more human way, and they can funnel you down until they get confused, and then they bring in a human. But that saves a lot of time. So I think in the near future, we're going to see a lot more of that, where human plus AI is really powerful. That we will be able to allow humans to handle more of the complex, creative things, and the AI will be able to automate a lot of the more root things. And then I also think I'm excited to see where things go when it comes to smaller data sets. How do we allow machine learning and data to be valuable for the masses? And I think that's going to come down to like really small data sets. Like, if you're someone doing agriculture on your farm, and I don't know, have a few hundred crops or whatever you produce, maybe you don't have a lot of data, but you think data could be valuable for you. How do we create algorithms that are as powerful as some of these deep learning things, but work on small data? I think is a super interesting problem. Is it possible? I don't know. Is there more work to be done there? I think for sure. And I think as we find ways to basically open up fields to data opportunities, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to free people's time up to do more creative, more rewarding, and higher value work. I think we'll just keep moving down that path as we find ways to automate and use data to replace functions. Humans will then basically level up and take up on more opportunities at a higher level.
Yeah, nice. That's really great. And for you, mate, at work, what's been occupying your mind space, and what things are you guys working on that you're excited about that you can share, obviously? But what are some of the things that you guys are working on or that you have coming up?
We're just super excited about bringing data to every aspect of product placement or product marketing, from TV to movies. Like, we already last year, we predicted the top 10 of the top 10 new TV shows, which was super fun for us.
Amazing.
So that's because what's the interesting thing about TV is you have to get your product in before the TV show goes live, right? Because it's part of the filming process. So you don't want to get in like a dud TV show. So you want to have some type of understanding of how well is it going to do. And so we can predict that fairly well, which is pretty exciting. What we look forward to is this world where data is used to automate a lot of these processes and make it so you have more of a consistent, reliable return on your investment in a place where people are still trying to figure out, right? If you're trying to get an influencer on YouTube or Instagram to talk about your product, the best practices around that are still being figured out. And we think we've learned a lot since we've been doing it so long. And we have an opportunity to take what we've learned and automate some of those using data, so that when brands work on these things, they don't have to worry about things like fraud. Like, there's so many fake followers or fake engagement out there that it's really easy as a brand to find someone on YouTube and think, oh, this person has 100,000 followers. They must be worth a lot of money. We should have them talk about our product, when maybe their engagement was actually fraudulent or purchased, or maybe their audience is in a completely different country than where they sell, right? So one of the things we can predict is, where is the audience located, so that they have a better idea of, will this work? And that's what we want to do, is kind of basically automate success in this area using data. And maybe you've seen some of this, being, an influencer yourself. Like, people have a hard time, I think, understanding the value of that. And we think we can add a lot of value for brands and for influencers, right? To understand what is their value, how can they maximize their value? Is it better for people to post on, YouTube at this time versus that time? Like, there's just a lot of interesting stuff to help both sides of the coin. And we're excited to kind of automate that, so that the return is a lot more known and low variance. So you're not getting just crazy, like, this person did great, this person just bombed it.
That's great. No, really, really good. And with it seems like a lot of like you guys have done really well in terms of developing your data science capability, and as a result, you've got this platform that allows you to scale and quickly be able to produce the results that are needed for your to deliver the value that the organization wants to bring to the marketplace. And I wanted to ask you about analysis or questions that maybe sit outside that, as in things that may not be automated, cases where you would have to maybe convince somebody as maybe as a strategic decision or something that's more of a once-off. And if you have any either examples or approaches on this kind of like other category that you could share with us.
Yeah, so one of the roles on my team is actually data analyst. They're a little bit different than a data scientist in that their kind of core role is to make sure we're using the data to its fullest capabilities. And a lot of times that comes in one-offs. So that can be like reporting, visualization. It can be answering specific questions for the business that don't necessarily need to be automated, or maybe they are automated in the dashboard, right? Or it could even be machine learning. Like maybe there's an opportunity to augment our data using machine learning and they can build out that process. So generally the team data scientists are working on like a little bit of a longer goal of like, we need to predict X, right? Maybe we need to predict conversions for a brand. They're kind of tackling that, where the data analysts are saying, here's an interesting question. Can we answer it? Or can we show statistical significance for this result? Can we build a dashboard that gives value to the executive team or to any team, right? And that's kind of the role of the analyst.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Really great. And I have probably one last question for you that I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you with everything that you've done and everything that you've achieved in your professional life, what are you most proud of? What has given you the greatest sense of achievement, and what do you look back at most fondly at the moment?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think what we're doing right now is what I'm most proud of, because I think what we're having is an opportunity, which I've had before, to kind of build a team and do it in a way that I think makes the most sense. Obviously, that doesn't mean I came in knowing this is the way we were going to end up. We learned a lot. We made mistakes. We improved on them. But it's fun to have an opportunity to be able to say, what's the best way we can do this, and kind of build that from the ground up. And I'm excited to hopefully look back in 3 years and just kind of say, we did something good here. Maybe it wasn't the best way, but we think it was a really good way. And we're building things that you just don't see in the space that we're operating in or at the size. So we're building a platform that we think is really something special, that we think only really, Netflix type companies have, or Google. And then we're hiring data scientists to run that platform who are really talented and working on really hard problems. So I think it's a super exciting moment for me in my career to be building these things, and hopefully in a few years, just kind of look back and say, yeah, like it all came together. It's working really well. We've been able to create these value adds for the company, and they've shown their worth over time. So that's what I'm excited to see about in the future is, looking back and be like, yeah, it all worked. We weren't crazy. We made these investments. We built these tools. We created these models, and it created a ton of value.
Oh man, no, it definitely seems like you are very much on the right path, and already kicking amazing goals. I've been super impressed. A lot of the comments in the chat echo my sentiments. People have been really engaged with your perspectives, with your insights, and we're all really thankful to you for coming on the show to share all that. And thanks, and especially like with all the data access that you have. Thanks, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the show. That's what you guys have. That's amazing.
Super happy to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you today. Thanks for taking some time off your public holiday, your day off for Labor Day. So I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your night. Everyone's writing. Just a lot of thanks. Fantastic guest. Thanks for the talk. And thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. And we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks again. See
Take
you
care,
later.
mate. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.